Good afternoon and welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us for this month's CloudBytes, a Sage Intacct educational series hosted by Dean Dorton. Today we're going to be taking a look at the newest Sage Intacct quarterly release with our Software Services Director, Philip Massey. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, please use the Q&A icon to ask. I'll be monitoring those questions throughout the session, and I'll make sure to get your question to Philip during the Q&A period at the end. If we don't address your question today during the session, contact information will be included on the last slide and also in the follow-up email that you'll receive. The webinar is being recorded, so you'll also get a link to the recording in that follow-up email along with the slides. Again, thanks so much for joining us today, and please don't hesitate to ask questions. Philip, I will turn it over to you.
All right, Nikki, thank you very much. Welcome, everyone. Great to have you all here. As you know, the Sage family, the Intacct product in particular, puts out 4 updates a year. They offer close to 200 new features and improvements. Many of those come from your suggestions. So even before we begin talking about what's in here, I just want to remind you that you should, if you don't, let us know, but you should have access to the Sage Intacct community where you can go in, you can enter your ideas for things that you think would improve the solution. And the more those ideas are upvoted, then the higher they rise in priority. So I would encourage you, as you're going through the system, if there is something that you think would make the solution better, please let them know. Go into the community, go into the ideas, or shoot the information over to us. We'd be happy to put it into the portal on your behalf. And see if something can be maybe upvoted by our team as well to give it a little more clout. So that's where a lot of the features come from. Today, we are going to talk about release 2 of 2024 that was made available over the weekend of May the 10th. So we're almost 2 weeks into it now. Feels like time has, even in just this little period here, flown by, but we're about 2 weeks into it. So we want to take you through some of the main highlights of this release. And then if we have time, I also do want to just run through the release notes themselves inside of Intacct, point out a few things, and maybe take a look at some of the stuff that could potentially be in the software. All right, so with that, so here are the top level highlights, and we're going to touch on each of these as we go through. But just in summary, we've got some things in the financials area that we want to talk about. Expanded financial reporting options for projects. So the projects module, the purchasing module, the order entry module, and even inventory and those types of things are now really beginning to reap a lot of the benefit from the emphasis that Intacct is placing on the construction industry and all the things that construction companies need. And that's not really something that's just pertinent to the construction industry, though, because a lot of these enhancements that we're seeing based on that really fit in a lot of industries, from nonprofits to professional services to many other areas. Expanded financial reporting options for projects, for example, would also apply to expanded financial reporting options for grants and nonprofits as well. So don't look at this list and think, well, I'm not in construction, I don't have inventory, there's nothing in here for me. There absolutely could be things in here that are byproducts of what's been done to benefit other industries as well. So blanket PO price conversion, bank matching sequence report, PwC control insights. One of the things I think is pretty cool is the bank transaction assistant file import. So general availability of that process now to give you greater flexibility for importing your bank files. a lot of maybe financial institutions, if they can't connect through Plaid and get that set up, it could be that you need to import, and maybe those financial institutions are really more geared towards QuickBooks or Quicken or some Intuit type products, and we've now given you the ability really to adapt to that rather than having to do a lot of work just to get the data into the system. Over on the right-hand side and down at the bottom under ease of use, Sage Fixed Asset Management. So I'm excited to see that product continue to develop. It is not the same Sage Intacct Fixed Assets that's been in the system already. That product is being sunset, not immediately, but in the future. And this is the replacement product for that, written from the ground up, specifically inside of and for the Sage Intacct tool. So excited to see that as it develops. Over on the right-hand side, revenue management capabilities increased, some construction enhancements, some supply inventory enhancements, an announcement made for the Sage Intacct fundraising platform for nonprofits. It's powered by DonorPerfect. So if you're already on DonorPerfect, it'll be a seamless little transition for you. If you're not, it might be something that you do want to take a look at and see, is that integration worth that change? And then perhaps the thing that I am, the two things I am perhaps most excited about are the REST API, which a lot of you might be thinking, well, that's boring, that's not accounting. But it is a leap ahead in capability and technology for what was already a very robust API platform, to take it into a more modern REST API look and feel. So that is exciting from our standpoint. And then some of the new list technologies and capabilities as well. Those are both in open beta. So we'll talk a little bit about those also. So first, let's take a look at expanded financial reporting options under projects. And again, projects, grants, jobs, anything that you put into that project dimension is now going to have additional reporting capabilities. So you'll have an ability to have more combined reporting, as you can see there with the green labels or the green image on this side. So you'll have more here to have side by side project reporting. You'll also have an ability to do individual reports. So previously, not all the boxes, or currently still, not all the boxes have a create individual report options on your financials. Projects is now one of those that does have that ability. So improving the amount, reducing the work that needs to be done in order to create an amount of financials inside of the system, really enhancing the reporting for anything that goes into that project dimension. Next, blanket purchase order price conversion. We're happy to announce in this release that we're fully supporting blanket PO price conversion. You can enter purchase and sales orders for non-inventoried items and track them in terms of price rather than quantity. So it allows you to manage partial conversion for price. You don't have to manually manipulate the quantity to convert to a specific dollar amount. So in other words, blanket purchase order, if you're issuing a blanket PO for supplies, office supplies, you don't have to now say, well, I'd like 10,000 office supplies at $1 each to be able to manage that to convert your quantities. You can now say, well, it's one purchase of office supplies for a total of $10,000. And when you convert that to receive those, you'll be able to do that off of price, not always have to do it off of quantity. So it gives you a flexibility to be able to create the purchase orders in the manner that you want to and maybe would logically need to create those purchase orders. So that's a great thing to really just, in my mind, keep a little bit of sanity, right? We don't have to do the fancy footwork with how many of these versus what they are and all that sort of stuff. You really can just work off of the actual total price. The bank matching sequence report. In the custom report library, there's a new report to see the relationship between the bank and Sage Intacct transactions. When you are, if you're in the process and you can't quite figure out what these last little bits are, and you're wondering, hey, maybe I matched something incorrectly before. These matching sequences give you that ability to know which pieces through this report have been matched and what they were matched for, right? So you can confidently review the results of a reconciliation matches, knowing only that Sage Intacct can assign these sequence values. So this isn't something that an end user can do. It's something really behind the scenes that happens when you make these matches in that bank matching and bank reconciliation process. It is unique to one or multiple accounts. So you can have it set up so that you're not getting repetitive numbers and possibly getting confused. It will indicate when it's part of an in process or a finalized transaction. And as I said earlier, users cannot affect these numbers. They can't assign them. They can't remove them. It is something that is controlled and done by the Intacct solution itself. So you know that it is an actual matching of transactions together, and no one's trying to alter anything with your environment. Okay. Again, that report is in the custom report writer, and it's also in the interactive custom report writer as well. So you can see that report in either place. So this is a dashboard that's available. The Sage Intacct is partnered with PwC to create the PwC Control Insights for Sage Intacct, and it is now generally available after having been beta tested for a while. The Control Insight module provides a live dashboard view of the health of a customer's financial control environment through assessment against a series of key control indicators, as well as a view of the maturity of the finance operating model. So in other words, this is actually going to look at your controls within your organization. So as it mentions here, it helps with, becomes kind of a foundation for the regulatory compliance for SOX, for single audit, for those types of processes that you might have to go through. Smaller companies may not be as interested in this. Larger companies, I think, would be very, it would be very good for them to take a look at it and see if it's something that would help them with the different audits that they have to go through. As with all dashboards inside of Sage Intacct, this is an actionable dashboard, so you can dive in, you can get deeper information, and then you can take action on the types of things that show up here, right? So do you have controls that aren't necessarily the correct type of controls, permissions, other things like that, login capabilities, those types of things? It really looks at, is your system as healthy and secure as it could be? Bank Transaction Assistant file import. So this is a new feature rolled out to general availability that gives you, this is one of the ones I was talking about before that I'm pretty excited about. So it gives you the ability not to have to do so much work to get your bank file into the system, your bank data, assuming maybe you don't have connectivity to Plaid or anything like that that can synchronize the data with Intacct, and you need to do these imports. This is a much improved way of doing it over the standard Sage Intacct CSV import process. It guides you through the whole thing. It's more of an intuitive, wizard-driven type of process than anything. So it takes you through step by step the mapping of the file, the kinds of information in the file, and really walks you through importing those transactions. And as you see on the screen here, you even do get a finalized screen before the import that lets you review the transactions that are in the file. Works with, out of the box, works with OFX and QIF files. Has some flexibility in it to be able to accommodate any type of file. And it also does reduce errors with duplicate detection. So it will look for matches of transactions. Hey, the transaction, this date, this dollar amount, this date, this number, near this dollar amount, something like that has already been entered into the system. Are you sure that you want to import this file, not this file, but this transaction into the system? So it's got tremendous amounts of flexibility in it to be able to meet your needs and give you a much simpler way to get your bank transactions imported into the system. Excel templates, things like that, you do not have to go through saving it as a CSV and risk changes in the data or anything along those lines by doing something like that. So it's a great improvement. Sage Intelligent Time is now rolled out throughout the system. Sage Intelligent Time combines the power of artificial intelligence and machine learning with project-based timekeeping that you already have in Sage Intacct. With this particular release, bringing it directly into the time area of Sage Intacct accounting to streamline collection and stop revenue leakage. So what we're doing in this particular release is bringing in Sage Intelligent Time instead of what had been the normal time entry solution inside the system, and giving users the benefit of the Intelligent Time product, which has won a number of awards for its use of AI and machine learning. So pretty excited about this being into the system now and not being a separate area or anything along those lines, eliminating a lot of confusion. Really just does give you that unified experience across the time capture and approval process. So for those of you using entering time into Intacct, you will see and absolutely love that. Employee expense allocation. Transaction allocations can now distribute employee expenses. So if you want to set up transactional allocations, just like you can in AP and GL and other areas, if you want to set those up and you want to then be able to use those so that when Mary keys in the receipt from Staples for the office supplies, she picks an allocation and it divides the cost of those office supplies between 3 different departments based on percentages that you give it. She no longer has to enter in 3 lines. She can enter in the 1 line and it can be distributed to the different departments. So that's really nice to be able to have that inside of the employee expense area, to be able to manage those allocations in the beginning, rather than having to go back and fix something later, change something later, adjust the journal entry, anything along those lines. Makes it nice to be able to do this from the very beginning in this latest release of Intacct. Sage Fixed Asset Management, the purchasing integration. So excited to say that the new, again, this is the new Fixed Asset Management module, which has been getting great feedback so far from users. Everyone that we have talked to has had positive things to say about the module. It is now integrated in with the purchasing side of Intacct. So you can now stipulate to create fixed assets automatically from vendor invoices. And when you have those vendor invoices in the system, of course, you have the ability to say this vendor invoice is a fixed asset. And you can see the highlighted area on the screen there where it is showing you the additional fields in there for fixed assets. So glad to have that integrated into the system now a little bit more deeply. Next, we'll talk about a partnership. And this is More than likely, particular mostly just to the nonprofits, but it is, we do have a good number of nonprofit clients, and Sage Intacct as a whole obviously does. But this is Sage Intacct Fundraising, and it is powered by DonorPerfect. So as I mentioned before, if you're already using DonorPerfect, then this would be kind of a no-brainer for you to make this simple adjustment and get a fully integrated system with Intacct's fundraising and DonorPerfect powering the fundraising solution. It's purpose-built for nonprofits, helps you raise up to 25% more funds in your first year. Love how they say that on the marketing side of things. Of course it does. But it has a centralized data flow between the DonorPerfect-based solution and Sage Intacct. So if you're in a nonprofit arena, you're either on DonorPerfect or you don't like the system that you currently have and you're potentially looking for something new, we would love to talk with you about exactly how this module works and how well it is integrated into the Sage Intacct solution. Next, we have revenue management. So revenue management has received a boost. It is, first of all, in a more centralized location. Previously, it was in multiple areas of the system. New menu path, new sections, new item listings for revenue management and order entry and AR. All of that has been consolidated now into those two areas. And they are exactly the same between the two areas, takes you to the same place, the same screens. It's a much more consolidated process for revenue management. For example, you no longer need to access the manage schedules page and produce reports. So we do have a lot of that consolidated now, so that's much easier for you to get into and work with the revenue recognition side of Intacct. One-click access on the revenue schedules option to drill into any supporting documents, for example, as it says there on the screen. So this part, no real feature enhancements for revenue management. This is really all about making access to revenue management much more centralized and streamlined. So it's easier for you to go about and handle those types of transactions within your organization. Construction, for those of you running the construction module, project level WIP management. Streamlines that WIP revenue recognition process. And I know we've got at least one or two customers out there that have talked about something like this in the past, so that's good for them to see. System automatically calculates over and under billing adjustments for every project for your fiscal period. It also supports overrides and adjustments and will automatically create and post the needed journal entries to the general ledger. So this will help with your accounting for projects. It'll help with your forecasting for projects. And it does have some override capabilities just to be on the safe side, so that if you know the numbers should be slightly different or you feel they should, you've got that ability to have some control over what the system gives you. For those of you that don't know, by the way, I will also interject here. We have found that the construction module is not necessarily just for construction companies. And what I mean by that is it does have some additional features. The retainage in AP and AR is one of the more prominent examples. But there are a number of features inside of here that companies might want to take advantage of that don't necessarily need construction. The good thing about it is the construction module is based on the projects module. So if you do have projects, it's a fairly easy transition. In fact, it's a seamless transition, I should say, from projects up to full-blown construction. So if you have any needs or thoughts around that, don't see it as just a construction module for construction entities. It does have other benefits as well that we'd love to talk to you about. Project contract billing enhancements. With release 2, users will be able to generate standard construction industry billing formats on draft invoices for a project contract and for retainage invoices created directly in AR. You can also choose invoice templates specifically for use on AR retainage release invoices as well. So a lot of enhancements inside the system in and around how construction companies bill. And, this part I would say probably is pretty specific to construction organizations, but it's nice to begin to have these enhancements inside the system. Supplies inventory. So we have worked hard. This is actually an early adopter. So contact us if you would like to take advantage of this, or certainly if you have questions about it. But this is an early adopter, which is more or less corresponding to a beta release where they're only inviting certain organizations in. And you kind of have to plead your case in order to be in it. But with supply chain shortages and a need to keep things as usual as possible, Sage Intacct has added full coverage for managing internal supplies, stocks, and the associated workflows. So we are working to help streamline from request to issuance for stocked consumables with this end-to-end supplies workflow. So it helps you manage what you have. It helps you manage the supplies that you have. There's a workbench component of this, so you can easily see what's on hand, get it into the hands of who needs it, and ensure accurate movement to record the cost. If you're moving dimensions, changing dimensions based on some sort of transactional movement, anything like that, of course, Intacct is going to track those as you go through. But this is a process to help you streamline your supply inventory management process. The REST API. Now, as I had said earlier, you probably are sitting there, unless you are do have a tendency to be on the IT side, a development side, something like that. You are probably sitting there thinking, well, I don't really care about the API. But the API is what powers any kind of data input or output with the Intacct application. So essentially what this means is this stronger, more robust API, which again, Intacct has had a very strong API from the beginning. This is more taking it into a standards-driven API so that it is even easier to communicate with other applications and to create integrations with the Intacct solution. It also gives you things like webhooks that will allow you to say, when a transaction changes in Sage Intacct, make this piece of data do something else. Right. So if you have these things and you're thinking, gosh, every time I add a customer in Intacct, I'd love to make it populate another system, this REST API is going to make that much more feasible. We won't need smart events and those types of things anymore. It will all be driven through the API like it should be. So with this release of the system, we are opening the beta up to everyone, so that you now have an ability to get to the Intacct fully modernized REST API. It increases ease of use. It is going to be a more stable product than what we currently have, which actually is an extremely stable API product. But a lot of changes to just the core of the API. The old API is still going to be around. It's still going to exist. This is more of Intacct's version 3 of their API. So the version 2 is still going to be something that exists for a long time to come. It's not going anywhere. This is just another option for folks that want to take advantage of it. If you need to get to it and take a look at it, or you have questions about it, take a look at developer.sage.com/Intacct, and that will get you to the portal that gives you all the information about the API. Certainly, we have developers on staff. If you have any questions about it, about what it could possibly do, etc., then please do let us know. And then the lists. So you probably have seen these lists somewhere throughout the Intacct solution thus far. The lists are becoming more interactive. The lists are becoming more collaborative within the system, and they are becoming more tailorable in the system to what your individual organizational needs are. So if you haven't turned on those lists, I would encourage you to enable them. Go to customers. If you want to start out somewhere user-friendly, go to vendors, customers, something like that. Turn on those lists, see what the changes are, see how the screens are different, see how the screens behave a little bit differently as you work through them. But I think what you'll find is, if you're like me, it takes you a little while to adjust. As I get older, it takes me longer to adjust each and every time to a change. But certainly, once you do adjust to it, it is a much better methodology for looking through your data, for parsing, for combing through your data to find things that you might be looking for. And it actually represents the data on the screen a lot more intelligently as well. Okay. So those are the big changes. We do have a few minutes left here. So I am going to try to pull up a screen. And if you'll give me just a moment, pull up a screen here. And what I want to do is I want to run through the release notes and just show you. I want to do this because I want to make sure that everybody knows that you have access to these release notes within your environment. And I don't want to assume that anyone understands and knows that those release notes are there. I want to make sure that you do know. So inside of Sage Intacct, I am logged into a demo instance of the system here. This is no one's data in particular, other than, of course, it is Bruce Wayne's data because he does own Wayne Enterprises. But when I'm in here, if I go to the home screen, which is what you see here, the home screen has a lot of information on it that can be helpful to someone who might have questions about Intacct. Everything from access to the Learning Center, to the community, and to the help and support system. Up here at the top, you'll also see 2024 Release 2 is here. A few things listed and so much more. Read the release notes. So if I click read the release notes, the first thing I'll point out is that there is a 16-minute highlights video. It is very similar to the presentation that I just gave you. If they did it in 16 minutes, they obviously talk faster than I do, but you could watch this video as well. And if I come down a little bit, expanded financial reporting options for projects. So that's one of the features that's highlighted. Click here and it'll take you to the detailed information about that. This shows you how to set it up, how to enable it, what has to be configured inside the system. And this gives you screenshots for what the new enhancements and changes are. So you can see specifically here, run as individual reports. And you'll notice that box only exists for what has traditionally been called the super dimensions, department and location. Now they have added it to project. So that may sound like a really small thing, but when you consider only 3 now, only 2 prior had that checkbox, it's a pretty big deal to put that checkbox on there. If I come back here to the release notes screen, bank matching sequence report, I can click here, and here's a copy of the report that I can look at. And this will also tell me both how to install the package if necessary and how to run the report. So the release notes inside of the Sage Intacct solution, I think, are just absolutely phenomenal. Quite frankly, if I may say, they probably make presentations like this one a little bit unnecessary with their videos and the documentation and things like that. We do still like to get together with you guys on a regular basis, so we'll continue to do these. But there is a tremendous amount of information in here inside the Intacct application that everybody has access to, that you can pull, and you can see what the new features are, what the changes are, anything that needs to be done to enable it in your environment. It's full interactivity with the new features and changes that have been put into Intacct with each release. On the left-hand side, you can see there are additional past releases here that you can access, and even hidden gems of 2023. So here's some things that Intacct came back as a year-end roundup and said these are some of the best features we added in 2023, and they've consolidated it and put it right at your fingertips. Okay. So that is all that I had for you today. I don't know, Nikki, do we have any questions?
We did have one question so far, and just a reminder, if anybody else wants to get another one in, feel free to drop it in the Q&A. But the one that we had so far is whether the new fixed assets management supports monthly straight line depreciation using half-year convention.
That is an excellent question. I will be honest and tell you that I do not know the answer to that question. So Nikki, can we take that as an offline, and when you send out the follow-up on this meeting, we'll send out the answer to that question as well?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. All right. Well, if you think of anything else, please don't hesitate. Send your questions in. You can send it to me. You can send it to Nikki. You can send it to ERP support. There's a number of different ways to reach us, but let us know if you have any questions, need any help with any of the new features, anything along those lines. We are here for you as always. I appreciate you coming today, and hope to see you next time.
All right. Thank you, everyone, and have a great rest of your day.